Howdy, everybody. My name's Brian McKeska. I'm with the Reynolds Company. I'm an automation specialist. We also have Mike Masterson on the line, Joseph Belashke, and Jesse Harvey. Next slide. I'm out of Houston, Jesse's out of DFW, and Joe and Mike are out of Houston as well. Other events coming up are the machine learning and AI for industrial applications next week, next Wednesday. We have a whole slew of other presentations still coming up with users groups every month and tech talks on various kind of in between days, in between weeks, I guess, on certain Wednesdays. Also, do want to note that LiveWorks is open for registration. It has already started. So this is on the PTC side. So if you've heard of ThingWorks or Vuforia Chalk or some of the other kind of newer software that we've been touting over the past probably year and a half or so, this is their kind of technical drill down. Right now, it used to be live and combined last year with Rock Live, which used to be TechEd. And this year, because of COVID, they split it up into 3 separate episodes. You can view on demand the one that has already been made on March 25th, but you can still sign up, register, and their Global Partner Summit will be June 15th of this year. And again, that will also be online. So feel free to head to or just Google LiveWorks, PTC LiveWorks, and the registration link should be one of the first ones that pops up. So getting on to activations. There are 2 main websites for activations and downloads. Typically, for the download side, you'll need a serial number and one other key piece of information, either the company name that's registered to, or typically the product key is going to be what you're going to use to activate it. So I generally will advise people to have the serial number and product key ready. And you can download either by the serial number, or if you download various products, you can potentially download the products and then just activate it later without seeing what specific versions that you may have access to. The benefit to downloading by your particular serial number, if you don't have a Tech Connect or support agreement under that serial number, you will only see the available softwares that can be activated by that particular serial number and product key combination. So that's why I tend to recommend using those 2 pieces of information for the download. You can go to compatibility.rockwellautomation.com, and under download, there's downloads by serial number. You will have to create an account if you don't already have a single sign-on with Rockwell, but it's a free to sign up and free to make. And it'll get you access to a bunch of other areas across their various websites and subdomains. And so the other alternative, if you just want to search Google for Rockwell PCDC, the first result is oftentimes the landing page for this. And you can find other compatibility matrix and additional information between hardware and software through this website as well. And Rockwell has updated their activations website, which is just activate.rockwellautomation.com. This is, you can download FactoryTalk Activation Manager at the Product Compatibility and Download Center, or you can download it at activate.rockwellautomation.com. This is the software that allows you to activate everything under the Rockwell umbrella. And there are various versions of FactoryTalk Activation Manager 4.05 4.01 is the latest, and they've done a pretty good job at revising this website to help guide you through a particular issue if you are stuck in your activation. And so what I would recommend a lot of people do if you're instantly stuck on an activation, you're not sure what to do, the smart guide on here on the far left side is kind of my go-to to trying to figure out, do I need to contact Rockwell? Do I need to potentially, grab more information? Maybe I don't have my product key, and so on and so forth. And so if you click on the smart guide, this is what it looks like. And you just answer a series of questions, and it drills down to what actually might be the issue. There'll be links to knowledge base articles if there's a certain procedure that you may need to follow because you're getting a certain error with a certain set of environmental parameters that you're seeing. So, and one other thing to notice on the previous page, on the landing page, edit registration is also now available through the website. Previously, you had to go through your distributor or Rockwell contact or TechConnect to change the registration from, let's say, an SI or OEM to the end user. Now you can attempt to do this online. And so it can make it very, very quick for, like I said, especially the SIs and OEMs that are buying and reselling software to end users and handing it over as part of a project. So that's one thing that's a little more streamlined than it used to be. Like I mentioned, 4.05.01 is the most current activation. If you're on a machine and you have the new Commerce Portal software, so it's commerce.rockwellautomation.com. Any of the new part numbers that you may have seen that automatically come with support, those are all Codemeter by default activations. Flexera is the older method of activations, and I would recommend any new machine just start with 4.05.01 and stick with the Codemeter activations if you can. It makes it really, really easy to do. And so I mentioned Flexera and Codemeter. Flexera, there's some stop gaps in between. So this very eye-heavy matrix shows you the various versions that are compatible with one or the other or both. There are a lot of versions that are compatible with both. So if you are kind of stuck in an in-between between some items having legacy and some items being newer, and then you can potentially still use the Flexera licensing on your either activation server or solo activation on the machine itself. But everything since November 1st, 2018 by default will be a Codemeter activation. So just take note of that. The old stuff, you may run into some issues if you try to go straight Flexera. As far as your, you'll notice it more with your having to do virtual machines with some older software. There could be some issues, and again, that smart guide really helps you drill down to that main either knowledge base article or allows you to reach out to Rockwell at that point. One of the new things with the Codemeter activation, like I mentioned with the commerce.rockwellautomation website is something called AutoGet, and this is an automatic activation through a exe file that you download. And so what you're seeing here is the welcome kit or the welcome email that you'll be sent after the purchase of your software. It'll have links to download your software, as you can see here, kind of in the middle bottom, and a link in the welcome kit to activate your software. And what this will do, when you click on activate software, it'll download a specific exe file. You run that exe and it will automatically retrieve the license from the Rockwell server and activate it on your particular machine that you're downloading to. And it'll go through the binding automatically. So they've tried to get to more of a one-click style activation that's a little bit easier than you may have run into in the past. Other methods of activation, it's almost always easier to even put a machine online, at least temporarily, to get the activation. Otherwise, you're having to pass .lic files back and forth from an internet connected computer to a non-internet connected computer. So with the offline activation, all you have to do is, again, have your serial number and product key, open up FactoryTalk Activation Manager. And once you put that in, you'll go through and validate your product. The biggest thing to note is the number of installs for that particular serial number and product key combination. And so you can see here, I have one to download, and as far as installs, and I also have one available. If somebody else had activated this available may show as 0, and I would not be able to activate it. So the person or machine device using the activation would have to do what's called a rehost to send that activation back and say to the Rockwell licensing servers, I'm no longer being used. And once you do a rehost, which I'll go over in a bit, this available will go from a 0 to a 1 or increment by 1 for every rehost that you do. The number available will only ever be as high as your number of installs available for that particular serial number and product key combination. You can also change the binding in this area as well. And the binding can be a whole number of things, but typically it's either the serial number of the hard drive or the MAC address of a NIC card that you have. And so going and clicking on download activation, you'll see the next screen should say either FactoryTalk activation download complete or failed. In this case, I had one to download and I was connected to the internet, so it is complete. And it'll show you your binding. I bound, in this case, to the serial number of my hard drive. And you can see the location of the .lic file. And this is typically by default. If you need to change it, there's a way to change the search path for that .lic file within FactoryTalk Activation Manager as well. And so one other thing you can do is what's called a borrow activation. So this comes in handy if you know maybe you're sharing a license between 3 engineers, and one engineer really needs it for a project, but he's going to West Texas where he's not going to have internet access, and he's going to be gone for a week. And so what he can do, or he or she can do, is borrow the activation for a set period of time in which it will expire. And so if you know you're going to be gone for a week or a week and a half, you don't have to rely on them remembering to return the activation for the next person to be able to pull that activation down. And so in this, you put in your serial number and product key, and you'll have that under the available activations. And with that, you'll see in the borrow activations that you can borrow those particular loaded licenses that you have already put in by the get new activation screen. And so once you have that, you just check the box. In this case, I only have one activation on this computer, but if I had a whole lot of them loaded and I was using them at various times, I could check the particular one that I need, set my borrow term. And in this case, I set it for only, I actually did end up clicking on 8 hours, but you can do any increment of time that you see here. And once you set borrow, you'll see successfully borrowed and when it expires. So after that date, the license will be returned to the activation server for somebody else to use. And so the next one, let's say the engineer gets back early, they can return the activation to the activation server by, again, just clicking on return activations, checking the box of which one they want to return, and just say return activations. It'll return to the server so that the next person can use that license if they do need it. And the other thing I mentioned earlier is a rehost. So if your machine, or let's say you're getting a new laptop and you want to transfer all the license from your laptop to the new machine, you can do what's called a rehost and return those activations temporarily to the Rockwell licensing server so that you can pull them back down to a new laptop and a new binding. So if you have a lot of products and maybe you're only transferring one, again, you can just check the box of which one you're looking to do. Or if you're rehosting from a computer that's offline, you can import the data file that's created from that offline computer. And once you do that, you click continue rehosting on an internet connected computer that has FactoryTalk Activation Manager installed. It'll make sure that you really do want to rehost it, and you'll just click continue, and then you'll see that it's rehosted successfully. And now you can go back to another computer or machine or server and say get new activations with that same product and serial number that you just rehosted to pull it back down to another machine and a new binding. One other thing, under the advanced tab within FactoryTalk Activation Manager, you can, I mentioned before with Codemeter being the newer style of licensing, you can configure the Codemeter server and also launch the what's it called? Web server that it is running if you choose to run it as a network server. And there's some interesting areas to dive into. You don't always have to go into the web admin, but if you are used to being able to view certain items in a Flexera licensing within FactoryTalk Activation Manager and you're having trouble finding it, let's say you're trying to search for what particular machine a license is being used on, what the host name of that machine is, and you're unable to find it within the newer version of FactoryTalk Activation Manager, it's likely that it's going to be listed in the Codemeter web admin utility. And that's where you'll end up going to view that particular information. One other thing I mentioned earlier was the activation search path. So if you're doing what we showed on the previous slide where you run the network server and run a FactoryTalk Activation Manager server, you need to point any other machines that are going to be using that activation server as their main activation licensing under the activation search path. And that's this blue button here. And you'll just point it to the network location of that server that's running. Another thing that's changed with the Codemeter switch is the different dongle types now that you can use for Codemeter. The old style Flexera dongles are no longer, you can still purchase them, but they do not work with the Codemeter licensing. The good thing is the new Codemeter dongles are cheaper. There is as of April 7th, 2021, today, the 8 GB storage variant is a little backlogged in manufacturing. So the lead time is going to be a little longer right now than the CM Stick C, which is your non-storage variant. The only difference between the two, besides size, is that storage variant that you can use to put ACD files or MER files or anything like that on it, just like a normal USB stick. You can use the SD card in lieu of the CM stick if you choose, but it is more expensive, and typically we're using the SD cards more for your execution protection on Control Logics and Compact Logics L8 controllers. So just be aware of that. This is what they look like, except I did not include the SD card. The SD card variant just looks like a normal SD card. So you may be used to either the green or the blue Flexera dongles. The newer CM Stick and CM Stick 8 are gray. They work with all the Codemeter licensing that we talked about before. They're not fully backwards compatible either. So you really do need to choose whether or not you want to do Flexera or Codemeter before purchasing a particular dongle type. As always, if you have a TechConnect agreement, or if you've purchased any software with a 8-to-5 or 24/7 support agreement with it, you can use this direct dial code to get to activation support if you've already exhausted your smart guide questionnaire and troubleshooting if you do run into any problems with activation. With that, I guess I'll open it up to any questions. I don't see any at the moment. Okay. I guess with that, I'll end it here. Everybody have a good day, and feel free to reach out to your local distributor or Rockwell person if you have any questions on activations. Thanks. Have a good day.